Tonight we're going to give you a new look at the War on Terror. We're going to take you inside the enemy camp and introduce you to one of the most valuable terrorists ever to change sides and work for the authorities. His name is Nazir Abbas. He's from Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim nation, and he was a top commander in Jemaah Islamiyah, Al-Qaeda's franchise operation in Southeast Asia. When he was inside, he trained hundreds of young militants to become terrorists, and he became one of the most wanted men in the region. For 20 years, Nazir Abbas worked to achieve an Islamic state throughout Southeast Asia. He embraced the idea of a holy war and spoke the language of jihad.
I hate the infidels.
When you say you hate the infidels,
Yeah.
infidel is a word that means something in your language, in Jemaah Islamiyah and Al-Qaeda. But explain to me, what is an infidel?
Infidel is a non-Muslim people.
And you hated non-Muslim people?
At that time. But it doesn't mean that...
At that time you would have hated me?
Of course, but now not.
Back then, in his days as a terrorist, Nazir Abbas's view of the world was simple, black and white. But that ended in October 2002 when the island of Bali, known in the West as a paradise and a playground, was shattered by this. Two massive bombs blew that paradise apart. 202 people were killed, young people mostly, Australians, Americans, and British tourists. Nazir Abbas had nothing to do with the attack itself. He knew what was behind it because he knew the bombers. He had trained them. How do you feel about so many of your friends causing the death of so many innocent people?
I feel unhappy, I feel sinful.
You feel sinful?
I feel sinful with that.
Because you taught them so much of what they knew?
Some of them I taught them.
Within days of the bombings, police zeroed in on Jemaah Islamiyah. 3 of its members, the key planners, were brothers. The mastermind was Nazir Abbas's brother-in-law. It was really a family affair. And it didn't take long for police to track down Nazir Abbas himself. When they knocked on his door, he says he attacked the police with the hope that they would kill him.
It is better to die than to be arrested.
It's better to die than to be arrested?
Yes.
And you wanted to die?
Yes. But
you wanted to die as a martyr?
Correct.
You must have been very disappointed.
Of course, at that time.
The arrest of Nazir Abbas and his comrades did not stop the attacks. The following year, the Marriott Hotel was hit. Then the Australian embassy in Jakarta. 22 people were killed. Hundreds were injured. And there was more to come. Their message had a familiar ring.
Bush and Blair, you liars. You are behind the infidel rulers who hunt down the Mujahideen fighters. You are the enemy we target in our attacks.
And the next attack? The bombers weren't finished with Bali. A remarkable document was drawn up providing the most detailed instructions for a new operation. It was called the Bali Project. Why Bali? Because a bombing in Bali would have worldwide impact. Bali, the document says, is better known than Indonesia. The target should be a place where white tourists gather, like right here at this restaurant. The document says the bombers should wear below-the-knee shorts, plain T-shirts, and sandals. They should pick a target where their backpacks will not draw attention. The final moments of the bombers are choreographed to the second. The document concludes that there's no escape plan. The bombers will become martyrs. They will go to their targets, and they will not return. The 3 bombers made their last will and testaments, said their final farewells. They primed their suicide belts. They were ready to go.
Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar.
So the bombers came right through here?
Yes.
They had their watches synchronized, huh?
Yes, correct.
Just as instructed, the first 2 bombers searched out their targets. What time was it?
That's around 7 o'clock. 7:15 like that.
Just about the same time.
Yeah.
And they were both looking for crowds, lots of crowds.
Yes.
At precisely the same moment on the other side of town, the third bomber walked into this restaurant. That's him in the back with a knapsack. A tourist walking in with his family turned his camera on. He had no idea what he would end up filming.
Not actually video.
The three bombs killed 23 people and injured over 100 that night in October 2005. Like so many terrorists around the world, the bombers learned their trade in Afghanistan. Hundreds of militants from Southeast Asia traveled there in the 1980s to defend Islam against the Soviet occupiers. They trained as mujahideen in a rugged camp which Nazir Abbas calls a military academy.
It's similar with the others military academy. Yeah.
A real military academy.
Of course.
Because when you say military academy, it sounds like West Point or Annapolis. You're talking about a mujahideen military academy.
Yes, Mujahideen military academy.
Abbas graduated with honors in artillery. He ended up giving weapons training to scores of young men from Southeast Asia. Did you love being a mujahideen?
Yes, I love to be Mujahideen.
Did you love jihad?
I love jihad.
By then, Nazir Abbas had become a very serious player in the movement. He established a military camp like this one in the Philippines, where he trained hundreds of young believers to become fighters. He was promoted to be one of the 4 regional commanders. But then in 2000, well before his arrest, something happened which would make Nazir Abbas question everything he believed in. A fatwa, a religious edict, was issued by Osama bin Laden, and this is what it said. It should be understood that killing Americans and Jews anywhere found are the highest act of worship and the highest form of good deeds in the eyes of Allah.
Yeah.
That was from Osama bin Laden.
Yes.
Abbas and his fellow commanders were ordered to read the fatwa to their men and make sure they carried it out. The others obeyed, but Abbas refused. It was his moment of truth. He firmly believed that jihad was to be fought only on the battlefield in defense of Islam. He had always been taught that the killing of civilians had nothing to do with holy war, that it was forbidden. The fatwa justified killing non-Muslim civilians.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
So if that hadn't happened, if there hadn't been this fatwa from Al-Qaeda, you'd probably still be a member of Jamaat Islamiyah.
Maybe.
Training soldiers to go to kill the infidels somewhere in the world.
I think so. Yeah.
Abbas stopped participating in the violent activities of Jamaat Islamiyah, and he started withdrawing from the organization that had been his life. Since he was released from jail, he has provided a wealth of information, helping the Indonesian authorities unravel the inner workings of Jamaat Islamiyah. Well, there you are.
Yes.
Here he shows us on his computer the membership, the structure, the key operational details. According to Sidney Jones of the International Crisis Group, who's been tracking Jamaat Islamiyah for the last 10 years, Nazir Abbas has been a huge resource. How valuable has Abbas been to the police?
I think he's been invaluable. I think he understands the network of jihadists in Indonesia in a way that nobody who's outside the network possibly ever hoped to understand.
Do you think he's contributed to many arrests?
I think he's probably responsible for about half the arrests that have taken place since the first Bali bomb.
Really?
I think he also understands details that nobody else is privy to. For example, he can look at the wiring of a bomb and know whether it was made in the Philippines or not, or know whether the person who made it was trained in the Philippines.
Abbas has been involved in the hunt for some of the biggest fish in his old organization. In November 2005, a month after the second Bali bombings, the authorities caught up with the man responsible for building all the bombs. He was called the Demolition Man. Police surrounded his house in central Java and opened fire. It was a fight to the death. There were explosions, and then the guns fell silent. The bombmaker died of a bullet wound to the heart, leaving behind his legacy, a video manual on how to build bombs, and 35 primed explosives waiting to be dispatched. It isn't clear what Nazir Abbas's precise role was in tracking down, but he was on hand to identify the body. How did you feel seeing your former colleague lying there dead?
I'm not happy. Yeah, I feel sad, but I knew that this is the consequence.
It's a consequence of what he did.
Yes.
But Abbas's contribution is not limited to undercover work. He is at the heart of the government's de-radicalization program, which is all about persuasion, talking to university students, combating the dogma taught in religious schools, and most important, trying to turn terrorists into prisons. Now that's why you're trying to convert them, to use a word. You're trying to convert them back to what you see as the true path of Islam.
Yes.
Because you feel guilty for what you taught them in the past.
Yes.
In the past you taught them how to use weapons, and now you're teaching them the true path of Islam.
Yes, correct. Because I realized that what I did before is wrong.
Abbas tried to right that wrong when he took on his former teacher and the leader of Jemaah Islamiyah, Abu Bakr Bashir, who was on trial for having approved of the Bali bombings. When Abbas began testifying, he was shouted down and a mob forced him from the courtroom. And then you were chased out of the court. People were shouting at you that you were a traitor.
Yes.
How did that feel?
I'm not afraid.
You weren't afraid?
I'm not afraid.
And you didn't feel horrible?
No. So when they are crowded, yelling, yeah, I'm infidel, I'm already became an agent, I'm a traitor, and some of them are yelling, kill Nasir, kill Nasir.
You're a marked man, aren't you? You're being hunted by radical Muslims in Indonesia.
Yeah.
You laugh, but you're in a very dangerous situation.
This is my life.
In the 5 years since the first bombings, the authorities have made 300 arrests and have held dozens of open trials. More than 100 men have been convicted. 3 are on death row. Jemaah Islamiyah seems to be on the run. The authorities have decimated its leadership, disrupted its organization. The secret, they will tell you, is a law and order approach to terrorism, talking to the terrorists, and above all, public trials.
Unlike the United States, which lets these people linger forever in Guantanamo or elsewhere, the Indonesian government has tried every single terrorist suspect in open and public trials in a way that serves an incredible public information tool.
The man who lived his life in the shadows as an insider in a secret organization will now tell you that what's most important is to bring things into the light of day, that the most important weapon is education.
We need to educate people. We need to give more explanation about what is right, what is wrong.
And this is what you're trying to do.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, that this is my new jihad.